Every single student who asked their parents for a laptop to go to university is now going to get one of these. The MacBook Neo is £599, that's the same in dollars. And if you're a student, or if you work in a school, you can get $100 off with the education discount, so it's $499. When was the last time you could buy any good laptop, let alone an Apple MacBook, for $499 if you're going to college or university? That's ridiculous! So I've had a couple of hours playing with the new MacBook Neo, and I have some thoughts. I will be getting a review sample, there will be a full review coming soon, but there's some stuff you should know before you maybe buy one. The Neo is the new entry-level MacBook. You've got the Neo, then you've got the Air, then the Pro, and then the Pro goes crazy with the Pro and Pro Max chips, and you can spend up to $7.5 grand with a top-spec M5 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro. This is $599, unless you're a student or a teacher, which is almost half the price of the new MacBook Air with M5. That now starts at £1,099. Now you are getting a lot more with the Air, and I will talk about the differences in a second, but it's still almost half the price of the MacBook Air, which is ridiculous. Although I would pay the $100 extra to get the highest SKU of the new Neo, because they both come with the same A18 Pro chip, that's from the iPhone, more on that in a second, 8 GB of memory, and the base model has 256 gigs of storage, and has a slightly sad lock button at the top right of the keyboard. The highest SKU, which costs an extra 100, has double the storage, 512, and Touch ID, which if you've ever used a Mac actually is very useful for not just logging into the Mac, but paying with Apple Pay online, logging into websites, your bank. Double the storage for an extra 100 quid, I would probably do that, and it's still £400 cheaper than a MacBook Air. But pricing aside, let's talk about the big question: which color are you going to get? Because there are 4 of them, and they're all quite nice actually. You've got your typical Apple silver, then we have this blush, which is a really nice kind of soft pink, indigo, which is a really nice deep blue, and the one that's been turning all the heads, this new greeny yellow citrus color, which may be as controversial as the cosmic orange iPhone. It would have been quite cool if they'd done a cosmic orange MacBook Neo so you could sort of match it with your phone, although I suppose my deep blue iPhone would probably go with the indigo version. What I really appreciate though is that the keyboard keycaps are color matched. The rubber feet underneath are color matched. Even the mesh in the speaker grill on the side of the laptop is color matched. And of course the wallpaper is color matched as well. And someone had to point this out to me, but it does say Mac in the wallpaper. You might have to take a step back to see that. So just the one size, 13 inches, there isn't a bigger version, unlike the Air, 4 colors, and like the MacBook Air, it is all aluminium. It weighs exactly the same, although the Neo is just a little bit thicker than the Air, but not by much. Actually, using it, this feels very much like an Air. It's very nice. However, they have obviously had to make some pretty big compromises to bring that price way down. The first one in terms of design is that there is no backlight to the keyboard, which in 2026 is a bit frustrating. Fine in the day, not so great at night. And if you are a student doing some 2 a.m., whatever it is you're doing at 2 a.m., then unless you know where all the keys are, it might be a bit annoying. So no backlight for the keys. The touchpad, the trackpad, it is not a force haptic trackpad. So the MacBook Airs, the MacBook Pros like I have here, when I click on the touchpad, it's not actually physically depressing the touchpad. It is just giving me a sort of haptic force feedback, simulating me pressing it down, which means wherever I press, it is exactly the same, and it's all very nice. And this is more expensive. On the Neo, it is a traditional diving board kind of design. When you press it in the corner, the trackpad does go in a little bit into the chassis. It's actually fine, and I even found myself being able to click just as easily at the top and the bottom, which is not the case for most Windows laptops. And so yes, it doesn't feel quite as premium, but it is not a big deal. It is not a deal breaker whatsoever. Also, the bezels, significantly thicker than the MacBook Air, which means you are actually getting a slightly smaller screen than the Air. Not really a big deal unless you put them side by side, but it does make the Neo look a little bit cheaper. Although maybe the plus side is that because you have these chunkier bezels, there is no notch on the MacBook Neo, which you may prefer. It's also a mixed bag with the connectivity. We get 2 USB-C ports, although only one is USB 3, the other is USB 2, which is pretty slow and very old, as well as a headphone jack. There is no MagSafe, and if you want to plug in a display and a fast external SSD, then you can't unless you use the slower USB 2, or perhaps get an Apple Studio display and use that as a hub. Also, you'll want to use a USB 3 for charging as well. If your outputted external display doesn't support power delivery, then I think quite quickly you'll be running out of ports, which is frustrating. The good news though is that it does support up to a 4K 60 external display, just the one display, but you can have the MacBook Neo screen open and the external display as well. So definitely a bit of a compromise on the ports, but we do get Bluetooth 6, which until now no MacBook has offered, even the Pros, as well as Wi-Fi 6E. So chunkier bezels, a tiny bit smaller, but otherwise basically the same screen as the MacBook Air. 13 inches, 3:2 aspect ratio, 500 nits of brightness. It is still a 60Hz IPS LCD screen, but that is absolutely fine for 600 quid. We also get a terrific 1080p webcam, we get dual microphones, dual side-firing speakers which sound every bit as good as a MacBook Air. But I think what's most interesting is what's going on the inside, because this is powered by Apple's own A18 Pro. That is a phone chip. That's what they used to power last year's iPhone 16 Pro. All I can say at this point is that more testing needs to be done. Apple say that the A18 will be absolutely fine for everyday tasks, for browsing the web, office work, even a bit of light gaming and light CapCut video editing. I think it's pretty obvious if you're eyeing up the Neo to play Cyberpunk or run Blender or edit your 4K videos, then this is not the right laptop. You probably want a Pro for that, actually. But that kind of is the good thing now. You've got the choice, the Neo, the Air, the Pros, and I'm also coming to the realization that I need to make a MacBook buying guide. I will say in my couple of hours with the Neo, it did feel a little bit slower. Everything was a little bit slower to full screen or switch over. Again, though, not something most people would worry about, and particularly not students, which this is definitely aimed at. Students, kids, you know, their first MacBooks, your mum and dad maybe, the new colorful front desk office laptop. To Apple's credit, their silicon, their chips are so ridiculously powerful, particularly the M series, but even on the iPhone side of things. And because there is no compatibility issue, everything that can technically run on the M series can also technically run on the A series because it's all Apple silicon. I think this will be absolutely fine. There obviously will be a question about how will this run in 5 years' time, but then remind yourself this is a $599 laptop, and you could probably buy yourself another $599 laptop in 5 years' time, or indeed just pay more and get MacBook Air. That's the whole point. So my next thought was, well, if we have a much lower power chip than the equivalent M5 on the MacBook Air, then surely the battery will last forever. Well, according to Apple, the Neo will give you 16 hours of battery life, the MacBook Air M5 18 hours. So the Air will last longer. The reason for that is that we have a significantly smaller battery in the Neo, just 36.5 watt hours, much less than the 53.8 watt hour on the 13-inch Air, but it will still easily get you through a full day, and that is fine. So that's the Neo. Downsides, I think the ports are a little bit limiting. You only have 8 GB of memory, you can't spec any more than that, which may be limiting over time. And together with the A18 Pro chip and also presumably slower storage, combined, that I feel like that will slow the laptop down a little bit, and the lack of a keyboard backlight is a bit frustrating, but again, not the end of the world. So if you're then thinking, ooh, maybe I should just get myself a MacBook Air M5, the new one, well, let me run you through it. What do you get if you spend an extra £500? You will get the new M5 chip, which is so much more powerful than the 18 Pro. You also get 16 gigs of memory and 512 storage as standard, which is amazing. I love that they've doubled the base storage there. 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports rather than a USB 3 and a USB 2, so much better connectivity. So you can output to more displays. You've also got MagSafe, so that frees up one of the ports. Higher quality webcam, you get the Touch ID as standard. Extra couple of hours of battery life. There is also a 15-inch option, of course, with the Air if you want the bigger screen. The Air is a bit thinner, although it's the same weight. And also, of course, we do have the thinner bezels, albeit with notch. Is that worth spending nearly twice as much on? Honestly, probably not. Although what may be a more tempting choice is to go for an older M2 Air. That's when they did the quite big redesign, and the M2, even the M1 is still incredibly capable for about the same price. And I would absolutely go for the M2 Air between the two, but it depends if you can find a good deal and it's, you know, got warranty as well. But my main takeaway is that there is just no other laptop at that price point, $499 as a student, $599 for everyone else, that offers that level of display quality, keyboard and trackpad. That's one of the biggest compromises you often get when going for a Windows laptop at that price point. A really premium design. I mean, just little things like being able to open it with one finger, having a high quality webcam, the speakers sound good. And yes, while it is a 60Hz IPS display, it looks so much better than pretty much all the Windows competition. If I'm Asus or Acer or Lenovo or HP, I'm worried because I think everyone and their dog especially if that dog's going to university, is going to buy a Neo. And I think it will also cut significantly into the amount of Airs that are sold. Bottom line, I'm very impressed. More testing needs to be done. I'm really curious to compare it to the Air and also to the Pros because they've also been updated with the M5. So many MacBook videos are coming, so make sure you have subscribed, and if you've got any other questions for my full review of the Neo, then drop a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.